Hi, and welcome to the Story Podcast. This podcast is Patreon supported. You can support it as well by visiting the Patreon I made for the podcast. It's called the Story Podcast at patreon.com/the Story Podcast. No underscores, no big letters, just the Story Podcast. So I hope to see you there. Well, today I am going to speak with a guy called Tim Paul. He's an illustrator and he makes maps as well. So I can't wait to speak to him. So give it up for Tim Paul. So today I have Tim Paul with me. Tim Paul is an illustrator from New York. Is that right, Tim?
Yep, Manhattan.
Manhattan. I always wondered what life is like on Manhattan. I myself live in the country in Denmark, so it's kind of quiet all the time.
Manhattan is amazing for inspiration. The city provides so much just raw information, raw data. Just the people of New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, you name it, any of the five boroughs, you are going to, on any given moment, run into something that's pretty amazing that just fuels the imagination, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be a street performer, it could just be somebody who just goes out and does their own thing. There's people who are really committed to providing a unique experience. There used to be a guy who would wheel one of those upright pianos out into the middle of this little tiny park area down in the East Village and then just play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't really looking for money. He wasn't really trying to make, anything for himself. He just takes the piano out every now and then on the weekends in nice weather and plays the piano.
Mm.
And there's people like that all over New York. And the amazing thing is there's also a lot of free stuff, like high-end free stuff. I remember once we got to go see a 40th anniversary of the movie Cabaret, which was completely restored. It was a new print from the original with deleted footage. And then afterwards, there was a Q&A with Liza Minnelli, Michael York, Joel Grey, and Charles Osborne.
Oh, that's awesome.
Free. And you're sitting in the audience and you're seeing all these other celebrities, like Alan Cumming is there and Charles Bush is there and just all these other people. And you're just like, and this was free. So that's New York.
Yeah.
It is. It's a little insane. But it's great.
I don't have that privilege in the country in Denmark. I have like a lawn that needs to be mown sometimes. And that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to talk to you about your illustrations today, mainly your maps. But when I started looking on your website, I was immediately drawn to your illustration, especially the one for children.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very, very pretty and like well crafted.
Thank you. Right now, map work has taken over a lot of my time, and I'm pleased with that because I stick mostly with for most of my work is done for publishers who are publishing books, and they have more money than, say, a gaming company, even a big gaming company like Wizards of the Coast. I know people, I have friends who've done maps for them. And now this isn't disparaging Wizards of the Coast. I'm not tearing them down. It's just that the nature of their business and the smaller profit margins for gaming makes it where they can't afford as much, but they want to give you the best quality. So I decided I would rather stick with novels and books because publishers have a little more money, and making maps is something I love to do, but it's also a business.
It is.
and I'm just making good business choices for myself when it comes down to who I decide I'm going to work for.
Mm.
It has nothing to do with like, oh, this is a terrible company to work for or anything. It's just simply a matter of who can I get the most out of
Mm.
for the same amount of work.
It, it comes down to freedom, actually, I think.
I think it does,
Yeah.
because the more I can make for a map, the less maps I have to make, the more I can work on my other stuff, and the more I can try and spread out. Like I was doing a lot of children's illustrations for a while, and then the map thing just kind of happened accidentally,
Mhm.
and then that kind of took over. Like I'm doing about 2 to 3 maps a month now,
That's a
and
great
so
pace.
it really is. And I've started to develop a fan base. I'm getting known amongst authors who are starting to request me for maps. Um, there's also a difference between doing a map for a novel and doing a map for a game. A
Mm.
game is far more, you need a lot more information in it, and it sort of has to fit the style of the company.
Mm.
Wizards of the Coast and what's Piazza? They all have a style that they're going for, and they need work that is harmonious with the rest of their material.
Mm.
My goal as a map maker for the authors is to create a map that fits within the world they are building.
Mm-hmm.
And so the novels, I get to work on a wide range of novels, which is to me very, very thrilling, because it's not then I'm not like the Dungeons and Dragons elf guy or this guy or anything like that. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just that I like variety. I like to work on a lot of different things. And so my whole approach to making maps is to make the map look like it's an object from the world. And sometimes that involves reading part of the manuscript. Sometimes it involves a lot of working directly with the author, which is always great. And so it also allows me to have a wider range of books I can work on. One of the earliest examples of this, I was given a novel, and it was set in an alternate Earth of our 1850s time period, which is in the West was the Wild West. So you've got cowboys and Indians and all this stuff, and but so the novel's main character was a biracial, bisexual heroine who goes on this vision quest, and during that she teams up with these rangers who roam the land protecting humans from the monsters that live there, because monsters like minotaurs and sandworms and giant Gila monsters and vampires and all that really do exist, and their job is to keep humanity safe from them, uh, while and keeping them unaware of that these things exist.
Mm.
So, I had to then go and research what maps from that time period look like. Things like what was the style of drawing mountains and rivers? How can I distort the land a little bit but still have it be recognizable? The type of fonts they might use, and then go
Mm-hmm.
try and find a font that matches it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I read the novel, I had this idea like, okay, what I'll do is I'll do it like it's one of these old printed styled atlases you would see that was be like huge,
Mm-hmm.
and that one of the rangers had come across an atlas at one point and ripped a page out of it that covered the area of Texas that they were in, and had been making notes on it where they had encountered monsters, where monsters were rumored to be, and then he drew in the main character's vision quest route.
Is that
And
is that the
go
one
ahead.
on your website?
I believe it is. I can look it up while I'm talking.
Yeah. It's like
Uh,
the one with the feather and shell
yes, that's
strap. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes. And the great thing about that is she did 4 books in the series, and so that's actually the map for the second book. The first one didn't have any objects on it. So what we decided, so the creative director and the author, they both loved the idea so much, especially since in the first map I did little things like the coffee ring stains and stuff like that, and that it looked like it'd been folded up. So as each book came out, the map got more and more tattered,
Mm.
um, and that the objects changed based on what was going in the novel. Uh, so it was really fun to be able to do 4 maps, take the same map and just keep aging it and adding to it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and using different objects to signify it and everything. And there's little Easter eggs that are only in there for people who know me.
Mm.
Uh, and like one of the like there's a little like to the left side of the map. There's all these counties that were named at the time, and so I went and researched, what was the various things in Texas around this time, and these were various counties, and I changed some and renamed some. One was really close to the creative director's name, so I named it after her.
Mm.
Um, and then, of course, down at the bottom it says published by Messrs. Howard and DePaul, and my last name is Tim Paul, and my husband's name is Tim Howard.
Mm.
Uh, so it's kind of putting us in there as people. Um, the author, she so loved this. She, in her second novel of the series, she actually has me mentioned as a character. So one of the Rangers pulls out the map and is pointing out some things, and the main character looks down and sees how tattered and drawn up on the map is, and she's like, I don't think that DePaul guy is going to like what you're doing with his maps.
That's awesome, isn't it?
It's such a great honor to do bring an author's world to life so much that they feel compelled to sort of thank you for it in their novels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really what it came down to. And yeah, it was just yeah, that's one of the best things about doing the maps is when you connect with the author and they love what you do so much they have to acknowledge it, which is not my goal in the long run. It's just to bring their world to life in the way they want. So I get to work on things like novels that are set in an alternate Earth India, or novels that sewing is the central theme of the novel, and so I tried to do one that would look like an embroidered tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really fulfilling because it's not just me sitting down going, oh, another fantasy novels. Here's the dragons, here's the elves, here's the dwarves,
Yeah.
which is love doing those too, you know. And it's fun not having a set style, so I can really push things.
Mm. That's one of your strengths as well. You have like what do you call it? You have so many different styles you can choose from. You have like
Yes.
the one you mentioned, but you also have something more traditional, kind of over to the Mike Slay-ish style, Dungeons and Dragons ish.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
know each other actually too.
yeah.
We've met, we hang out. Um, I know it's kind of funny. I would say there's about maybe 8 or 10 people who make maps as a part of their um, living.
Mm-hmm.
Like have you ever seen the Game of Thrones maps that are these kind of poster size, and it comes in a book and there's like 12 of them? The guy who created that, Jonathan Roberts, I know him. There's a couple really great female map makers. And whenever somebody and we're all connected on Facebook. And whenever somebody's like, hey, I need map makers, we all recommend each other.
Of course. Well, you have to do that.
You do. And,
Yeah.
it's just being, looking out for, you of course promote yourself too,
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually a case of like, well, I do maps and, here's my site and here's other people, you know, because some people have it in their mind what they're looking for. And, if you're not what they're looking for, there's no harm in promoting somebody else who is,
Mm.
because they'll return the favor.
Mm.
And they all do, It's like there's just enough map work to keep us all busy that we don't have to be cutthroat with each other.
Mm.
And so I find that satisfying.
Exactly. I also was contacted to make some dungeon maps once, but that's not my specialty in any way because I make like overworld maps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I pushed on to like there's a guy called Crosshead. There's some other guys called a 2 minute tabletop. I think they're much better
Yeah.
at the stuff than I am.
Hmm.
Um, so they I send them that way.
Yeah.
um, but let's go a little bit back to the map with the Texas thing because how do you feel when you have to like alter the map?
How did I what?
How did you feel when you have to alter the map to like to make it different from the first version? Because I spoke to a guy called Jerry Gritzinger. I don't know if you know him.
Does he go by Blando or Bando?
No.
Nope. Okay. I'm
Uh,
thinking there's a Jared guy who does
oh, okay.
maps that I know.
Um,
Uh,
this guy,
but okay.
this guy Jerry Gritzinger, has been making the same map for 50 years. Um, he has like all sorts of different small tiles that he align up next to each other, so it forms like a big map.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he has a bunch of cards that tells him what to do next. So
Um,
he pulls a card and it says go to the seventh tile in the pile, pull out that one and alter the city or something.
uh, well, that sounds like a way for him to generate random maps. Um, I have no problem changing my maps. Like,
No.
you know, the map, like like the Durango territory map, as it's probably easier to identify on my
Mm.
website. Um, you know, the way I work, I used to work as a production artist in textbooks and corporate communications. And I learned and developed the best habit anyone could ever have digitally who worked digitally: be organized.
Mm.
So everything is on layers, everything is named. I group things, so
Mm.
it's easy. So when I'm finished and I pass the map on, anyone who looks at it that needs to make an adjustment can quickly understand where things are.
Mm.
So there's always like the paper background, there's the drawn elements, the text elements, and then even then I'll break the text elements down into groups like city names, country names, geographical, water, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so everything is easily editable, quickly editable. Um, and like I keep all the text editable. Uh, I let the end user know what the name of the fonts are. Sometimes they supply me with fonts so I can, in case they want to match the fonts with what's used on the cover or elsewhere in the book. I mean, I'm a little untypical as an artist, as in I'm working for the client and this is ultimately their product. And I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm going to try and overshoot their expectations and still be happy with what I created. I understand some artists, this is how I work, this is what I believe, this is what I want to do. And, you know, there's sometimes a little conflict between client and artist,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just the person that believes, this is for you. You, whether I agree or disagree with your choices, in the end, I will find the best solution for you.
Mm.
I'm really good at working with clients and talking with them and show, it's like for me, the object is to always say no with a yes,
Mm-hmm.
meaning a client they'll say, okay, let's try this and everything. And I will give their ideas a good try. And if it's not working, I still give it a good try. And then I give a couple other options like, while I was working with your idea, I had this idea and I had this idea, and I'll send them off. And that way they can see, oh, I can see how my idea is playing out. And you're right, that doesn't quite work. Let's go in this direction. And they still feel like they've contributed because, they see that their idea spawned other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what they just want, is to make sure that they're being heard and that you're not just blowing them off. Um,
Mm.
so I'm really good at, I don't want to say getting my way. I'm really good at helping clients see the best option if because they're not used to thinking visually like I am. I've been training all my life to think visually, and to learn how to quickly express my ideas.
Hmm.
So I can take what they're thinking, translate it into some type of visual, and then offer options.
But they have also hired you, so they kind of expect something of you, right?
Right. And that's another thing I'm really, really good at is making clients trust me from the get-go. Because what I do is I talk about how this is going to work with the clients. And, when I talk with illustration students, I stress this so much. If you can make them feel like you know exactly what you're doing, even if you don't quite feel that yourself, it changes your relationship with the client
Mhm.
because they have no idea how to create something like this. They've never done it. They uh, they may never have hired an illustrator, or they may have hired different illustrators and have had different experiences. um, Seriously, just like I just go in and I say, okay, this is how I work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple and I do this for illustration too. I'm going to give you some thumbnail ideas. They're going to be really tiny. They're going to give you this general gist of it, and you're going to look them over. And if you like them, if you like one over any of them, we'll take that and go with it. If you're not sold on any of them, this is a chance I will come up with X amount of more ideas, and then you pick from those. Um, and then from there, I'll develop this, and then from there, I'll go from here. And I
Mm.
tell the clients exactly where they have their input and how many times they get their input. And then I tell them, and if you feel it still needs development, we can continue to do that. And each time you want to add additional round at this point, it costs X amount of dollars.
Mhm.
That way they know what they're spending up front. They know, so they can make a choice and they don't get hit with, oh, well, now I have to charge you an extra $100.
Mm.
Um, and there's times I've had clients that say, hey, let's do another round because I want to see these. I had this idea and I want to see these changes, and boom, go ahead.
Mm.
And sometimes they'll be like, you know what, it works. And so they you create in this sense of responsibility on their end.
Mm.
You can have your input at these points, and after that point we're done and I finish it, and boom. And so they take it really serious because they know that if they're not paying attention and they miss something, it's on their head. And I word it all in the case, and the way you word it also is along the lines of like, this is, if you tell me a specific direction and I don't follow it, I have to correct it for free.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing clients really appreciate is when you let them know, if I don't follow your directions when you give them to me, I have to fix it for free. And it's usually pretty easy because, like I said, I keep everything
Mm.
organized.
Mm.
And so, like, on a recent map, I had like all these little tweaks and changes at the end that after they were comparing the map to the manuscript, and I hadn't seen the manuscript. They were like, oh, we need to tweak this, and oh, we need to tweak this, and oh, I spelled that wrong, and this and everything.
Mhm.
And I had spelled the word dessert instead of desert.
Ah.
And they'd given me that direction, and then I made all the changes, but I missed that one. And thank God we still had another round. They're like, oh, we missed correcting desert. So I fixed it, and no problems.
Mhm.
With maps, I usually allow also one round of tweaks after the finished artwork is done, because there are so many moving elements
Mm.
and names sometimes on a map. I want a map to go to print with everything spelled correctly. I never want to be the cause of an author getting an email or a tweet or a text that says, in the book you spell it this way, and on the map you spelled it this way.
Mhm.
Which is it? I'm confused. Um, because that's just horrible to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a mistake happened. Blame me. I made the map.
Yeah. So, where did you start this map making? What do you call it? Like habit?
Um, it started around, I think, 2013 or 2014. A friend of mine, fellow illustrator, got a request from an art director we both knew about doing some maps for some novels that he was art directing. And my friend felt the pay was too low. And so he said, "Hey, I don't think I'm interested in doing this, but Tim might be." So the art director contacted me, and I was like, "Sure." Um, and so I did a map for them. They loved it. I did 2 more maps for them. And then in New York, there is the Society of Illustrators, and it is actually a building. It's a museum slash restaurant slash clubhouse, drawing center, all sorts of things that I'm a member of. And they were having a trivia night, and I went, and there was a bunch of friends there. And 2 friends were talking about working for this guy, and I said, "Oh, I did some maps for Dave." And Lauren Panapinto, who is the creative director for Orbit Books, and now I think the vice publisher, uh, she grabbed my arm and she goes, "You draw maps?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like clutched onto my arm, and she's like, "Oh my God, I'm always looking for people who do maps. It's so hard to find good maps. Send me some samples tomorrow, and I may have a job for you." And I was like, "Okay, okay." So I sent her some samples, and she's like, "All right, you're hired." And if you on my website, if you go to the Illustrated Atlas section,
Hmm.
down at the bottom, there's 2 maps. The first one is uh, Neldar, and the second one is Durzel.
Hmm.
Those are the first 2 maps for her. It was a 6-book series, and that was the map for the first 2 books, and then the next 4 books take place in a different part of the world. So they were really happy with my map, because they had requests like, "Can you put some drawn elements and keep them on a separate layer so we can pick them up and use them as chapter headers?" And I did that. So like the sword and the little ninja throwing star ended up being like internal decorative maps. And
Hmm.
so, and back then I was just trying to draw fantasy style maps, as you can see,
Yeah, they look
and
kind of Tolkienish.
kind of
Yeah,
tokenish.
kind
Because
of.
every map maker probably starts off worshiping Token.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and that's not actually, he didn't draw that map,
No.
um, but we all think of it as Token's map.
Hmm.
Um, and so from there, she started giving me more maps occasionally, and it wasn't until the Wake of Vulture map, the Texas map, that things really clicked with us, because that's the first map I was like, I want this to be part of the world. I want to help world build, because when you
Hmm.
open it up and you see this map, you immediately get a feeling of Wild West.
Hmm.
The type, the drawings, the little images and everything. And you get a feeling that this is, something in the world, because there's blood stains on it and coffee stains, and it gets ratty and tatty. And Lauren just loved that idea. She was just like, "Wow, and now when she talks about me, she's like, he's our map maker. Uh, he does
Nice.
like almost all our maps. And the other thing she likes working with me is because I'm really good at working directly with authors and helping them pull out stuff about their maps.
Hmm.
Because what I usually get is a very simple drawing, um, and when you start planning it out, you start realizing there's a lot of open space, um, and so what are we going to fill this with?
Hmm.
Uh, and I'm, because like in my mind, you know, and you can kind of tell when you have a new author versus uh, a lot more seasoned author. As new authors, they just focus on what's important to the book, which is understandable. And so like they have this big open space off to the left, and it's like, what's there? Trees, mountains. You tell me. Uh, and it's a careful balance between making the map interesting, but not building the world for them, because then it becomes a question of copyright ownership. And
Hmm. Hmm.
the visual representation of their world, I retain the copyrights to that one specific image. I don't own any of the information on the map, so I don't want to create parts of their world for them, because now that throws the whole copyright into this really weird area that I would just love to avoid, because I do not have any interest in glomming on to somebody else's work and say, oh, I built that world.
Mm.
If it wasn't for me, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
So,
So you made like illustrations before you made maps.
yes.
Okay.
And I still do illustrations, like most of the stuff in children's and editorial and lifestyle were all stuff done from maps before maps.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it's just a case of like, there's only so many hours in the day, and so I'm looking forward to getting back into those areas and everything.
I really
The
like the one called Opera.
Yes, that
Yeah.
was just done for me. Like, I like listening to opera.
Hmm.
Um, I love stage productions of opera. Um, and living in New York, hey, I get to see some really great
Hmm.
stuff. The they did a oh, I forget it. I'm really bad at names, so please forgive me. But uh, the Metropolitan did the Ring Cycle, and I saw it on PBS, and that's a long investment because some of those operas are like 4 or 5 hours.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not like all of them. Like, one opera may be 4 hours long, and it was gorgeous. It was absolutely gorgeous. My illustration nowhere is even related to it. Um, but I also like the idea of things like they have a real horse in an opera, and so this is always the last piece in my portfolio too, because I'm sort of playing on that old joke of it's not over till the fat lady sings.
Mm.
And then, of course, the idea of this huge woman belting out these amazing, beautiful songs in a huge voice and everything, as if she's riding this tiny little horse who's just struggling to stand.
So, how did you find this style? Because it's very unique.
Um, I am uh, one of my favorite periods of animation and illustration is the 1950s and 60s, a style that was called cartoon modern. Uh,
Cartoon modern.
Modern.
Okay.
There's like a great book on it. It dealt like, I don't know if you remember a lot of the Bugs Bunny cartoons, but you could see examples of cartoon modern in the backgrounds where they will like draw the outline of a dresser, and it may be a sort of ornate dresser,
Mhm.
but the coloring for it may just be a block of color that doesn't fit perfectly. It's based a lot on geometrics. It's based a lot on line, and it's based a lot on simplifying the shapes down. So I try and incorporate that element. I love textures. One of my biggest influence is both Mary Blair and Alice and Martin Provenson, who probably influenced me first. I remember coming across a couple books of theirs at a flea market once, and just being it. One was Aesop's Fables, and I still have it. It's on my like art shelf of books, um, where it was just all great textures. It looks like they painted with first a palette knife, and then went over with thick, heavy lines. I don't use outlines anymore in my work. I used to a lot. Um, and then I had all these teachers that would be like, "You can't stop drawing lines," um, which I didn't understand, because everything I was looking at had lines.
Mm.
Um, so it just evolved from there. And the thing is, I believe in inspiration, not uh, copying.
Mm.
So I think like one thing I see a lot in young artists is they end up copying too much.
But don't you think it
Um,
helps sometimes to copy some stuff to learn like techniques?
that is a hard question to answer, because the answer is both yes and no.
Mm.
It's a tricky balance. I definitely think uh, copying to learn how to create stuff
Mhm.
can be helpful. provided you then take that and translate it into your own voice. And what I end up seeing a lot is they never reach their own voice, or they get so much likes for what they're doing that they're afraid to break out, because it's like it's the popularity trap, and I've talked about this with other illustrators and everything, how like being Instagram famous, great, you got 10,000 followers on Instagram and they all love your stuff, and you're still a starving artist because they're loving your stuff, but they're not buying products, and they're not people who can hire you to do illustrations, unless of course you're the type of artist, and there are a lot out there that make a decent living this way, where they'll draw you or your friends or whatever you want in their style for anywhere from like $30 to $200 depending on the complexity of the image. But those people have also developed a real style on their own, so they help stand out. So copying for practice, yes. Copying as a shortcut to complete work, we're starting to get tricky, because every art director I know doesn't want somebody who is like somebody else. If Fred Flintstone, and I just picked a bad, terrible name for example, works in a certain direction and you ape Fred, most artists just say, well, if I think Fred is the right person for this, I'm going to go hire Fred because I'm going to get the original, the legit thing, and there's that. Now, everybody gets at some point asked, hey, I've been asked, hey, can you do a map but do it in this person's style? And I'm like, no, go hire them. Oh, we can't afford them. Then you can't afford me either. So yeah, and the other parts of my styles are just things I want to explore, ideas I have. I mean, I would hope that every creative person out there wants to, wants something that's unique about themselves to be reflected in their artwork and how they express themselves. Like, I love line and everything, so I'm always trying to figure out how to create lines in the artwork, ways to put that in there. Like if you scroll down in the last one with all those animal humans on the subway, there are all these little attempts to work in line, like in clothing, and like the old turtle's face and the water buffalo. So, that's all stuff I want to get back to exploring.
It's also a beautiful picture as well.
Thank you. I'm also fascinated by the trains in New York. When I used to have a day job that I had to like travel to and everything, I'm always taking pictures of people on the train that I find amazing to look at. And
they don't think that's annoying.
Nobody knows I'm taking pictures. Everyone thinks I'm just self-absorbed on my phone.
Okay.
I've only been busted twice.
Okay.
And it never resulted in a problem and everything like that. I've had people go, oh, that's an invasion of privacy. Oh, you're wrong to do that. You need to take everything down and everything. I'm like, well, one, we're in public, and two, I had these couple of people, they're like, I'd be so angry if somebody took my picture and then put it on all these totes and products and we're making money off of my image. And it's like, I've never done that. I have absolutely no interest in monetizing any of these pictures I take. These are all personal references for me, because for something or other about this person I loved. And I've never taken anyone I've taken a picture of and drawn a picture of them, and monetized it. It's all personal reference. I do post some of them to Instagram, because, and I've had a lot of artist friends thank me for that, because they're like, your Instagram people your trained people are such an inspiration. Sometimes I just look through them to get inspired for characters I need, So it's really not about monetizing the person's face or whatever. It's just about making a photo, an album of photos reference for myself. When I'm going through the internet, if I see castles or pictures or landscapes or anything like that, I just save it to a folder and, photo references, and it's just for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and it's never to copy it, because that's what I see a lot too, is they're like, oh, I found a reference, and then you look at it and you're like, well, you just copied the reference. So, yeah, there's that.
I, I haven't seen your Instagram train people. Where can I find that? On your Instagram, I expect.
It's Yeah, it's just my Instagram. Let's see. I think it's Tim underscore Paul underscore ILLO. And I don't update it that much
No.
because one, I work from home now, so I don't get on the train as much. And it really just focuses on the things I like most in life. And which is like, I'm looking at it right now, and like the first picture, we saw these salt and pepper shakers at a resale shop, and it looks like a Victorian style lady, and one's head is knocked off. It's just broken off. So I was like, oh, Marie Antoinette salt and pepper shakers. uh, and then the next person is of a person. It's this beautiful black lady who had this big natural hairdo, and she had just run a marathon, or she was on her way to run a marathon, and I just loved her big natural hairdo and her. And then there's lots of pictures of food, uh, and because me and my husband, we both bake a lot, and we have a lot of dinner parties. Um, so it's either somebody I find interesting, something ironic, food, or sketches of stuff I'm working on.
Interesting.
So
So, what are you working on right now, if you can say so?
literally before we started talking, I'm working on an invite to our 20th anniversary cocktail party. We've been together 20 years, and we decided to have a little in-house cocktail party,
Mm-hmm.
invite all our friends. So I was working on the invite for that.
Nice.
I'm also working on a children's book and a map.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I have two other maps coming to me from a publisher. They've said that they have a couple, and it's just they haven't gotten them to me yet.
Mm.
So
One thing I was thinking of before when we were talking about maps and talking about the 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 thing about being creative and stuff is that I work at a daycare center in Denmark, and I see kids like drawing all the time. They're like it's instantaneously they're like drawing stuff. It's just something. They don't care if it's pretty or something. But there's like a fall off in school where they don't want to draw because they're like making fun of themselves or something, and then only a few people like picks it up again.
well, I
why
think
why did you pick it up, or did you fall off at all?
God, that is such a hard question to answer. The desire to draw never fell off. I have drawn all my life.
That's great to hear.
However, there have been periods when I did not draw because my personal life was in such turmoil, or there was stuff going on that the luxury of being able to set my problems aside and just focus on drawing wasn't a reality. And so there are times I've had many years where I didn't draw, or at least I just drew sporadically.
Mm.
I think for a lot of people, for some people, they may find better ways to communicate themselves, maybe writing, maybe just talking. But I do think many societies sort of accidentally devalue creativity. I definitely think in America it is, and we're always being told that's babyish. That's
Yeah, exactly.
grow up. It's like my father would get mad at me for watching cartoons when
Mhm.
I was in my teens, and it's like I enjoyed this as a kid. Nothing's changed,
Mm.
you know. And I would be, what crack me up. He'd be like, "Why are you watching that crap? It's for kids. What are you, a baby and everything?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's adults who make this, And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just like, why are you, It's like this isn't made by kids for kids. It's made by adults for everyone.
Hmm.
And good cartoons have something on all levels. Uh,
Completely
so
agree.
yeah, and I was the weirdo in school, so it was okay for me to keep drawing in school because, well, that's what weirdos do. They're the creative ones.
Hmm.
Um, and since I was also not popular and didn't have friends in school, I never got the peer pressure of, go play sports or go do this or go do that and everything. So it was pretty easy for me to sort of slip under the radar, and it was a way for teachers to also try and encourage me to come out of my shell or whatever they thought was going on, um, or try and connect with me.
Hmm.
So for me, drawing was always a refuge in my growing up and in school and everything. And it was a way for me to, it was a way for people to actually interact with me and be like, wow, that's really great. I remember my senior year in high school, we finally had an art show and I had a bunch of pieces up in there and I actually sold a couple pieces.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
which and that was like years ago, and I have I've been told by the people who have them they still have them up in their place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like one is a drawing of a wizard, and somebody was like, "Oh, I bought that, and I still have it up in my place,"
That's
and they sent a
awesome.
picture of
That's
so
really cool.
yeah, and also it's kind of funny because like one of them I had to somebody wanted it, and I was like $3 to cover the cost of paper. And it was a drawing, one of our drawing sessions was we had a student sit up there and we did rough sketches of them, and I was confident to draw her face, so I just drew everything but the face and sitting on a stool. And for a lot of people they read into that whole thing about like, what's my identity, who am I,
Hmm.
um and somebody wanted to buy it, and I was like, $3. I don't have $3 on it. And one of the teachers was like, just give it to him, just give it to him. And I was like, I fought, and I was like, $3, it's not much. And so he finally paid me $3.
Hmm.
um and it's just funny because I am so adamant about getting paid for your work.
Hmm.
And I just, the funny thing is, like, it goes back even way back then, like in high school I was like, I'm not drawing for free, give me money.
It's my time I spend.
If it means enough to you,
Yeah,
pay up.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I pay for everything in life because, like, I don't pirate or download or torrent anything. I've been given stuff that has, and I'll throw it out. And it's not because I think I'm better or I have, like, I'm a snob or anything. It comes down to self-respect. If I want to be respected as an artist, I should be respecting all other kinds of artists and
Hmm.
not be, you know, taking money from them by downloading a book or a movie or whatever. you know
Hmm.
if I want to get paid fairly, I and the simple solution to that is you don't need everything in this world. So
No, no. But we kind of live in a world where that is, what do you say? It's encouraged to like take that path, to like wanting everything now.
yes, and I totally agree. It is a instant now, and because so much stuff is free on the internet, I
Hmm.
understand that younger artists and younger people don't see the problem of downloading and pirating and everything because they were born into it,
Hmm.
you know. But at some point, you have to say to yourself, what kind of person am I?
Mhm.
And I have lots of friends, respected art directors and everything, who have admitted, they've downloaded stuff. Um, and I'm not judging anyone. Like, I've never said I can't talk to anyone if they pirate stuff. So that's just my own moral code,
Mhm.
and it's always been there.
Yeah. There's this famous experiment called the marshmallow test. Do you know that one?
No, explain it to me.
There's a kid sitting in front of a table, and on the table there's a marshmallow. Then you ask the kid, if you can sit still for 10 minutes without touching the marshmallow or eating it, you get another marshmallow. As simple as that.
Hmm.
All right? Uh, Kids will do anything to like distract themselves. Um, there are some kids that like take the marshmallow, eat it, but there are also those who like can like postpone the needs to get
Hmm.
stuff. Um, the great thing about this experiment, it was done in the 70s, 80s, I think, that they made a follow up 30 years or something later. That the ones that have eaten the marshmallow like instantaneously weren't able to postpone their needs,
Hmm.
so it like that event created ripples on through their lives. So they, when they become adults, that they don't have like a higher education or something, but the ones that could postpone their own needs have like a higher education. They can like they're funny to talk to. Um, it's it's a great what do you call it, experiment.
Yeah. I love uh, behavioral science.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't been an artist, I probably would have gone into some type of form of behavioral science and psychology. I have always been fascinated by what motivates us as people. Um, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm such a people watcher, is because I'm always trying to see if I could pick up clues on what's going on with this person, and can I visually get their story um, from how they act.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I've read. I haven't heard about the marshmallow experiment, but I've heard about other experiments like that, especially things like about when children start becoming conscious of other people. When like young children, like 5 and under, they tend to think everything they know,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why sometimes really young kids have trouble explaining themselves, because they don't know the words to describe what they're thinking. Plus, they also assume that you know what they know, and that lying happens when kids start realizing you don't know everything I know,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not in the room with me, um, you can't say what is true or not.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been done experiments like that where it's like, you know, the cookies on the table, you say the kid, don't eat any of the cookies, you leave the room, the kid eats a cookie, they come back, where's a cookie's gone? I didn't eat it. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
think I think it's just simple as well, it's nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
uh and I went through it with my family growing up, in that my dad was really big on do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, he would come home every day and he would kick off his shoes and socks, and he would ball up his socks and put them on his shoes, and they would sit right next to his chair. And so I would come home and I would do the same thing, and then he'd always be like, go put your shoes upstairs. He'd get all mad, and finally one day he was like, why can't you just do it right the first time? Why do I always have to remind you? And I'm like 10, and I'm like, because you do it, Dad. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I learned to do this from you. You come home every day and you do the blah 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 and everything. It's just like language. We learn language
Mm-hmm.
from listening to our parents, and it's blah 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 and everything. He goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. He swore. I'm trying to keep it clean. And so it's like that. It's like, I think parents don't realize the unverbal communications they put out to their kids, and that those get picked up faster than uh,
Hmm.
being what you're told.
Exactly.
Because usually what you're being told is like the opposite of what your parents do.
Kids are they are extraordinary good at this skill, at picking up every single form of nonverbal communication.
Their whole brains are wired to do that
Yeah.
because that's just how, and I think that's what people don't realize is that, the, new brains are wired to pick up everything and process this information, in ways that we don't even realize that's going on, and I've had friends who've had kids that have done a great job in raising their kids to be well behaved
Hmm.
in different situations, like that they get on the train, the subway here at New York, and they sit still, and they're not loud, and they're not running all over the
Hmm.
place, and then other times I see people with kids that, I just want to scream at the parent, because the kid's just all over the place and can't
Yeah.
sit down, and it's just like, so yeah, you can raise your kids to not be so uh chaotic,
Hmm. Hmm.
and to have longer attention spans.
Yeah.
I think we totally got off subject though.
Totally. but but what we're just talking about is like my whole education. So I'm actually making this podcast on pure interest in map making and world building and
Hmm.
wanting to hear stories from other creative people. Um, but I always love to hear some stuff that about this topic because
Hmm.
since it's my education, I know stuff about this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Um,
I love hearing other people's process. um you never know when you're going to come across an idea that might work for you,
exactly.
and I encourage anyone who wants to be an artist to listen as much as you can, you know and find a way to make things work for you. Experiment for everyone. Like, the age old question young artists tend to ask a lot, and all of us experienced artists kind of joke about, is what brush do you use?
Hmm.
Well, the answer to that is I can tell you what brush I use, and you can go out and you can buy it. But what that brush isn't going to come with is the 20 years of experience
Hmm.
I have making images and how to use that brush. And it's not going to have the thought process in it and why I choose to do something. And that is something I built up over 20 years. It's like I said, like I learned how to be very organized in my digital files, being a production artist, making corporate communications and textbooks,
Hmm.
because you have to be,
Yeah,
because
I learned that the hard way.
exactly,
Yeah.
I mean, if you've ever worked in such a field and you get a file from somebody where you have 100 Photoshop files and it's all layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer
Hmm.
4,
Hmm.
and you're just like, oh crap, I literally have to go through and click on and off every single layer
Yeah,
until I
yeah.
find this element I need. um you learn or if you're working yourself and you find, oh my god, this thing is a mess and I don't know where anything else is because I put it away for a week. um and so that's something, that's not going to teach you. You're not going to learn that through my brush, what brush I use. It doesn't come built in.
Mm.
you know it's not going to tell you why I do things in a certain order. you know all of all of my choices and how I do things and in what order are all based off of experience and finding out, okay, I need to do it this way for me to get to my end goal.
Mm.
And so the answer to what brush do you use is, I can tell you what brush, and I will at the end, but it's not going to come with this, and it's not going to come with that, and it's definitely not going to come with this. And what you should really do is buy all the brushes and see how each one works for
Hmm.
you and what connects with you, and then build on that brush. Now here's the brush I use.
Hmm.
I mean, there's nothing wrong uh, with telling them brush, but they have to understand the brush is just a tool, and how you use the tool really is individual and unique to each person.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Um, well, I don't have any more, Tim. We kind of went over time a bit,
You did.
but I'm not complaining.
You could probably cut out some of that stuff about.
Talking about kids.
Yeah, just cut all that crap about kids out. Who
Yeah,
cares?
who cares? They they'll become adults sometimes anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, well, it was a pleasure speaking to you, Tim.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on your show.
So that was my talk with Tim Paul. If you want to see what we talked about, because we talked a lot about his stuff, please visit his website. It's called timpaulillustrations.com. He has some subdivisions on the website called Children's Editorial and Lifestyle, Illustrator Atlas, Comics, which we didn't speak about, but it's definitely worth a look. And if you want to reach out to him, please visit his website called Tim Paul Illustrations. And thank you for listening.